Hello and welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys. Again, dedicated to the proposition that the IRS is a criminal enterprise that needs to be obliterated from the face of the earth. And despite what all the politicians might tell you, have you noticed that for a while, I want to abolish the IRS, then that became, I want to make it a little friendlier entity? That talk has kind of died down. We still need to get rid of this thing. And there's one and only one way to do that, and that's not to make it friendly, and that's not to pass the flat tax. It's to pass the fair tax, get rid of the income tax that the IRS is charged with administering and enforcing. That's the only way you're going to get rid of that criminal enterprise.
Yeah, and some of these folks in Congress, prior to the tax reform, or the tax change package being signed, they were talking about, well, we need, like Bob said, a friendlier IRS. Yeah, forget that. We tried that before. And somehow they said they were going to have a flat tax that eliminated the IRS. Well, wait a minute, hold it. It's still an income tax. A flat tax is still an income tax. You still need some kind of an agency to collect that from people. And because it's an income tax, it will still have evasion problems. We have a huge evasion problem with the current income tax. And going to a flat tax isn't going to change that much. So you still need an enforcement agency. So politicians talking about, well, we're going to eliminate the IRS with this flat tax. That would never happen.
You've got people talking about we're going to make the IRS friendlier, we're going to reduce it in size, we're going to make it more manageable to deal with in one breath, but then the other folks will turn around, well, how are you going to deal with the evasion? Oh, we're going to hire more agents and do more audits.
Doesn't really make sense, does it?
No, it doesn't. And hiring more agents and doing more audits means you're going to hassle more, honest taxpayers.
Yeah, and think about that. 80% of the people are paying their taxes legally. 20% are not. So if you're going to do more audits, there's no flag. You don't know who's actually paying properly and who's not. So 80% of the people you audit are going to be 100% legal taxpayers. Aren't you going to really create a lot of problems by wasting the time of 80% of your audit victims?
Yeah, but a lot of those honest taxpayers are going to be making honest mistakes. The tax code is so complicated. You could get 3 different IRS auditors going through the same tax return and come up with 3 different, things that are wrong with it.
That's true.
We've done that before.
Yeah.
Money Magazine has done that before. You give the same information to 50 different tax preparers, and you get back 49 different answers as to what the family owes. The complexity of the tax code is probably one of the number one reasons that we need to get rid of it, because you can't understand, even if you are honestly trying to comply with it, and you hire honest guys like Jade Wiley, whose business it is to help you get through that. Mm-hmm. And it's still so complicated that you just can't get it right.
Yeah, that's right. And so does that mean with these increased audits that you're going to start dragging people through the mud because they made an honest mistake? They made a mistake they weren't aware of? That for me, I use the software. If there's a problem, it's in the software. All right? Tell it to the programmers.
Yeah, let me tell you, going to a flat tax is not going to fix the problem of civil-asset-forfeiture.
Yeah,
that is
right.
When the IRS just swoops in, thinking you may have done something wrong, and they snag your bank account out from under you. You got lots of places that has happened to. Now, a very small percentage of overall taxpayers, but when it happens to you, when it happens to your small business, you wake up one morning and the IRS says, well, I think you're structuring, which means that you're making, payments that are just under the threshold for, being reported to the IRS, is when you make a large cash deposit, like cash-only businesses would do on a routine basis.
Sure, like a convenience store,
or a restaurant or something like that.
They do a lot of cash business. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, so, and when the IRS does that, the Bill of Rights goes out the window. They don't have to abide by the Bill of Rights. Congress has given them the authority to ignore the Bill of Rights. So you have no presumption of innocence. None of that stuff pertains. So like Bob says, the IRS thinks you've done something. They don't even accuse you of doing something wrong. They just snag your bank account. They freeze it, and you're a small business person trying to buy supplies for the next day, and you find out your bank account was frozen, and you try to find out what. So then, what does the small business person have to do? They got to hire an attorney. That's the last thing they need. I mean, there's a lot of competition out there. That's the last thing they need is to have to bear the expense of an attorney to try to get the IRS to loosen up their
In a
bank
lot of
account.
these cases, the IRS will just hassle you for months, if not years, and then say, "Oh, okay, you're good. We'll see you later."
Yeah. So
and
after
you spent all that time, you spent all that money trying to defend yourself against something that you never did wrong in the first place. So going to a flat tax will not fix the evasion problem.
That's right.
Going to a flat tax will not fix this civil asset forfeiture thing. That is actually they tried to the idea of that was to try to let the IRS get criminals, drug dealers that were making large cash deposits. As is the case so often. The idea is rooted in a good idea, but it gets out of control.
Yeah. So it would be better if we went to a tax system that was almost impossible to evade, such as a sales tax.
Yeah, that's really hard.
Yeah.
You've used this before. Imagine going into Walmart and you're trying to purchase a big screen TV and you get it up there to the cash register and say, "I'm not going to pay the sales tax on this." And the cashier looks at you and says, "You're not taking that out our door then."
No, and if you don't move along, we're calling security too.
There you go. So I tell you what, a sales tax, a consumption tax is much, much harder to evade. So it fixes the evasion problem.
Yeah. It negates all the language in the tax code. It makes everybody's life so much simpler, does away with the unnecessary IRS, which, harasses people sometimes for no reason at all. And it's such a simpler system. And again, there are 9 states that have a sales tax and no income tax. And it works, and Bob and I are lucky enough to live in one of them. And it works very nicely for those. So let's do that for the entire country. It can be done. I mean, this is the age of computers. You can collect the sales tax very quickly, right at the point of sale. Done automatically, sent to the federal government. The vendor sends it to their state organization, and the state collects the fair tax and sends it to the Treasury. It's all done by computers. It's so simple.
Administration and enforcement of the consumption tax, like the fair tax, gets so much simpler simply because you're no longer auditing 320 million individual taxpayers.
Yeah.
You're auditing, several thousand, if not maybe a million or so, businesses.
Now, actually, there's about 20 million businesses.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a big country, but still, 20 million businesses as opposed to, I think, 160 million tax returns. Come on. What are you going to do? And plus, the federal government doesn't monitor them. The states, 45 of the states already have a sales tax. They know how to monitor the sales tax. They know what to look for if there's some kind of sales tax fraud. And they know how to come down on these people. So it's already being done. Let's use the infrastructure that's already in place.
Okay.
Why reinvent the wheel?
Indeed. Let's move on a little bit. Give folks our email address one more time, thefairtaxguys@gmail.com. And also encourage folks to go to our Facebook page and keep your eye out for our next Facebook Live event. We wanted to mention a friend of ours, Terry Tibbetts.
Yeah.
A while back, he co-wrote a little pamphlet, booklet, what have you, about the fair tax.
Yeah, basic introduction.
So let's go back to some of the stuff, the research you did on that little thing. And one of the things you were asking, what I think was very effective, was people love choices. If I have a choice, do I want a red, ice cream cone or a blue ice cream cone, whatever you got? I don't know. But choices are what make life go around, So we have a choice when it comes to, you don't have a choice as whether or not to, well, I guess some people have a choice whether or not to pay taxes. The evaders have chosen not to.
Yeah.
And they can't do that legally. But anyhow, some of the choices that you are presented with between the income tax and the fair tax, we kind of illustrate how this fair tax works. Let me ask you a question, Ron. Would you rather spend hours reporting your income and expenditures on a bunch of complicated forms, calculating percentages, paying for the software and all that stuff? Or would you rather just pay your taxes anonymously at the cash register when you buy things? You have 10 seconds. Go.
Okay, well, I think the second one that you mentioned there sounds like a whole lot simpler, all right? Wouldn't we all rather just have the taxes paid automatically when we buy stuff? Doesn't that sound a whole lot simpler? I mean, think about it. All the nonsense with the current income tax it takes up all our time. And remember, if it takes time for a business to comply with the tax code, it costs money and we pay for it. The consumers pay for it. So, yeah, there's no question.
So there's income tax versus fair tax there. Again, folks, if you haven't heard this, fair tax replaces the income tax. There are some people who will tell you that the fair tax will be tacked on to what's currently in place. No. The fair tax is a replacement for the income tax. With a fair tax, the entire income tax system, all the things that support it, the withholding and all of that goes away with a fair tax. So let me ask you something else. Would you rather retain the IRS to collect taxes and have them spend billions of dollars on oversight and enforcement, or would you rather have your federal taxes collected by the retailers and then sent to the state and from there to the federal treasury? 10 more seconds, go.
Yeah, doesn't the second half sound so much simpler? I mean, you go to the store, you buy something. The clerk says it's $1.380 or whatever it is. You whip out your credit card or your cash and you pay, and you're done. You've done your due diligence. You've paid your federal taxes just by making that purchase, because the fair tax is included in the price of whatever you bought. Automatic. Or you can hassle with reporting your income, the deductions, your employee business expenses, form after form after form, hour after hour after hour, and pay your taxes that way. Come on, folks. What's the more efficient way of doing it?
I have another choice for you. Would you rather continue to put up with this estimated 19%, $1 billion evasion problem, or would you rather see tax evasion reduced almost down to nothing?
Yeah. Again, the evasion is, and actually since we wrote this document, I think it's up over 20% now. But evasion is a huge problem. It's like 1 out of 5 people are not paying their income tax the way they should be. So the other, 4/5 of us are picking up the slack. Or you go with a sales tax, which, as we mentioned before, is nearly impossible to evade. All right, how are you going to, and Bob has already mentioned this, how are you going to evade a sales tax when there are about 500 of the stores in this country do about 90% of the sales? Big stores and chains like Walmart, Target, Sears, and so forth, those stores. I mean, it's all automated. It's all done by the computer. It's done automatically at the cash register. So you can simplify your life just by collecting it when you buy something, or you still have to deal with the evasion. Horrible problem. Evasion really cheats the rest of us out of part of our livelihood. That's what's happening.
Mm-hmm. And this is kind of a similar thing. I mean, it just kind of aggravates you when you see somebody getting a free ride that you don't get.
Yeah.
The golfers getting a break that us bowlers don't. I'm going to keep doing that. But there are people out there that they simply evade the tax. They don't file it. They don't file. They make their money in less than legal means. Mm-hmm. So are you, an honest taxpayer, going to continue to tolerate people who cheat the system, non-filers, illegal immigrants, drug dealers, foreign tourists? They pay nothing towards the system. Or would you rather make sure that those folks are paying their fair share when they buy the new goods and services that we all do?
Yeah. Because everybody, when they go to the store, will pay the fair tax. It doesn't make any difference how you earn your money, whether you earn it legally or illegally. Okay? You're going to pay your taxes. Right now, we have a situation where, like I said, about 1/5 of the people are not paying their taxes, and we're picking up the slack. We are paving the way for these folks to have a free ride in terms of what the country provides for them. Is that right? No, I don't think so. All right? We need everybody with skin in the game. And that's what the fair tax would do. I mean, it's, again, everybody's going to pay the fair tax when they go to the store or write a check out to the plumber or whatever. All of us are going to pay the fair tax, and it's going to be very, very difficult to evade the fair tax.
All right. Would you rather have the full gross amount of your paycheck brought home with you, or would you rather have withholding and payroll taxes?
Let's see now. More money in my paycheck.
You've got 3 seconds on that one. Go.
Or in my case, my retirement distribution. Yep. I would like to get my entire retirement distribution. Yep. No problem there.
That's it. Social Security, you can have federal taxes withheld from that. Your IRA distribution, you can have federal taxes withheld from that. If you hit the lottery, for some reason,
yeah.
you can get a big chunk of federal taxes. And if you have a choice, would you rather have that happen to you, or would you rather have the full amount that you earned or won?
I mean, that's a no-brainer, folks. You know, so
yeah, the scarecrow could figure that out, can't he?
and you know, again, let me go back to the families that are just getting by. They're earning just enough to get by. They're earning enough to put food on the table, clothes on their back, and a roof over their head. Okay, and not much extra. All right, the fair tax really takes care of these people because 1, they get their full paycheck. 2, they get the prebate. Everybody gets the prebate. Not just the poor. Everybody, every legal family in this country gets the prebate. And 3, they have another advantage in that if they buy a used car, when their car goes bad and they have to buy another car, they buy a used car, no fair tax on the used car because somebody already paid it once, no double dipping by the federal government under the fair tax. So again, all these things that Bob and I are talking about, they really help the people that most need the help. So... What else are we doing here?
I'm asking you, folks, you have a choice here. Would you like to continue to live under the requirement that you provide the intimate personal details of your personal finances to the government? Or would you rather have a system that says this whole process is irrelevant, the government doesn't care how much you make or where you make it?
Yeah, boy, that's another one. Why do we have an income tax system that requires you to divulge more information about your family finances than you would even care to share with your own kids? You know, my wife and I don't share a lot of that information with our kids. It's none of their business, but it's all got to be divulged to to the IRS. It's not right.
Well, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison would think that it's none of the government's business either.
No,
because you remember when the original Constitution was written, an income tax was verboten. They would not. It took the 16th Amendment. They had to literally amend the Constitution to allow the federal government to collect an income tax.
Big mistake.
Huge mistake. And we're trying to get it. And again, the fair tax is contingent upon the repeal of the 16th Amendment, because, you know, an act of Congress, no matter what it is, cannot change the Constitution. The fair tax can repeal the current income tax code. But it also has this further provision in there because we do not want to give the government both an income tax and a sales tax. And the fair tax says on the day it becomes law, the 7-year clock starts. That's how much time that the Constitution allows under the normal amendment process. But the fair tax says if the Constitution is not amended and the 16th Amendment is not repealed within that 7 years, then the fair tax goes away.
Yep.
And we don't want that to happen. We want to make sure that the 16th Amendment goes away. We no longer want to have to tolerate sharing the intimate personal details of our finances with the government. It's none of their doggone business. Jefferson and Madison were right the first time. We need to fix that.
Yeah, and if you want proof of that, just go back around Christmas and listen to our FAIRtax Power Radio episodes around Christmas and New Year's, because Thomas Jefferson will tell you himself.
He will, absolutely.
That's right.
Now, this next point is slightly outdated because they did have the revision a while back, a couple of months ago, where the corporate income tax rate was reduced.
Yeah.
We had, at one point, the highest corporate income tax rate in the world, and it was knocked down a little bit. And what happened when it went down from 39% to 21%? You saw hundreds of companies, giving bonuses to their workers. In some cases, raising the minimum wage for their starting wage for their workers.
Expanding their business and hiring more people.
They will give back. So would you rather continue to have a high corporate income tax rate, which is adverse to business, or would you rather, say cutting it from 39 to 21 is good, how about cutting it from 21 to 0?
Yeah, there you go.
Would you like to have a 21% corporate rate, or would you like to have a 0% corporate rate? And some people will say, wait a minute, we can't let the corporations get away scot-free. They need to pay tax on their billions of dollars of profit.
Yeah, and that was one of the discussions that one of our volunteers had with somebody the other day at the Strawberry Festival. The person just could not get out of their head that corporations had to pay taxes. They just couldn't understand. They couldn't make that conceptual leap that, folks, you and I pay corporate taxes. I mean, if a company makes windows, all right, they buy glass, they buy framing material, they buy the machinery that puts them together, they pay for the labor that runs the machinery, they buy the computers for the offices, they pay for the people that run the computers and so forth. all that stuff gets rolled into the price of their product, and when you buy the windows, you pay for it.
People
indirectly.
understand that. When you buy a product, you are paying. The retail price contains the cost of the labor and materials and the advertising and the transportation and everything else that goes into making that thing and getting it to market where you can get your grubby little paws on it. They understand, but when you tell somebody that we're going to make those corporations pay taxes, they don't understand that that is a cost of doing business that gets rolled downhill to them just as well.
That's right. And for many of the small companies, the complying with the income tax is actually more expensive than the tax itself. And figuring out how to legally reduce their tax burden. They have to comb through the entire tax code, which, as you know, from what we said before, is over 70,000 pages, to legally reduce their tax burden. If they can't, well, then they're paying more taxes. And again, you and I pay for it when we buy their products. All of the costs of doing business, including the income tax and their compliance costs, are rolled into the price of their product every time. So
do we want to continue tolerating retail prices with those embedded taxes in them, or would we rather create a system where that doesn't happen? The free market naturally sets the price and encourages producers to use their resources to improve their products and services.
Yeah. Remember, a corporation is a legal fiction. It's people. You may have legal documents that name a corporation, have a board of directors, but it's people. It's always people, okay? And so people pay the cost. And when you put an undue burden on the corporation, it's the people that pay for it. They're consumers or the people in the corporation.
Time's getting away from us here on this episode of FairTax Power Radio, so let me skip down to one here and address something that our friend Jade would answer.
Okay.
Would you continue to oblige corporations to have CPAs, attorneys, and lobbyists, and have all those folks focus on minimizing their clients' tax burden, or would you rather have CPAs and accountants making it possible for business to help improve their products and services?
Yeah, sure. And like Bob said, Jade really addressed this, okay? What if you're a small corporation and you can't afford all these CPAs and tax attorneys and so forth? I mean, what if you're a mom and pop operation and you're trying to get through as best you can? And you're searching through there. And there's all kinds of legal tax loopholes that you're missing. All right. Now, Jade works for a big company, and they help corporations legally reduce their tax burden. It's all legal. But the people with the smaller businesses, they do not have that capability. They don't have those kind of finances. So it's a real problem. So do we really need a tax system that requires all those professionals to help you not only be legal, but to legally reduce your tax burden? Or would it be just a lot simpler if we had, say, like a simple sales tax?
All right, let's go on. Would you rather have a requirement that nonprofit organizations and churches have to restrict their political speech in order to preserve a tax-exempt status, or would you rather just let them exercise their rights of free speech and advocacy?
Yeah, and the IRS has really gone out of their way to, remember the whole thing with the Tea Parties a few years ago? Yeah, asking them for the books they read and so forth, and the what goes on at their meetings. The IRS has no. I'm not going to say it, but anyways, it's none of their business what happens at a private meeting. All right, if somebody's misbehaving or slandering or so forth, we have laws to take care of that. So no, we do not need the IRS poking their nose into our personal business, even if with its a group that we belong to, whether it's the Tea Party or any other group. So it's a bad idea. So let people alone, leave people alone, let them have their free speech, which is in the Bill of Rights. Don't trample on the free speech part of the Bill of Rights. Get rid of the tax code, which gets rid of the IRS, and leave people alone.
All right, question. Which tax code would you rather have? One that takes over 70,000 pages to describe, or one that takes 131?
Oh boy, that's not a tough choice, is it?
Yeah, would you rather solve a 9x9 Rubik's Cube or a 2x2 Rubik's Cube?
Actually, I stay away from those things. I leave it to you, Bob. You're the expert with the Rubik's Cubes. But anyways, yeah, I mean, think about it. The tax code is well over 70,000 pages, and every time you submit your income tax return, you are certifying that you understand every word of it. I mean, really, folks? Every word of it? Again, use the software, let those folks deal with it. Or a simple sales tax, which you don't even have to think about it. It's a sales tax. You go to the store, you buy something, you're done. You've done your legal requirement to pay the taxes. It is so simple. All right. So, anyways, yeah.
One more last one, folks.
Sure.
Would you rather live in dread of April 15th, or would you rather have that be another lovely spring day when you can go out and have a picnic?
Oh, Bob, you had to remind me. I haven't even started my taxes yet.
Ooh, mercy.
And even though my finances are really simple, I mean, we're a retired couple. We don't have any businesses or anything like that. It still takes a long time to fill out that.
Yeah, well, I've done mine, and mine's as simple as well, and it took me about 2 hours.
Oh, yeah. So, anyway, did you do the standard deduction, or did you go through?
I did. But the thing is, when you're going through this, you've got to figure your taxes twice. You've got to figure out all your deductions.
Yeah.
And then decide if that adds up to enough to take the standard deduction. And it's kind of maddening. You sit there and you answer all these questions. How much medical expenses did you have? How much did charitable donations did you give? How much this, and this? And then they add that all up. Or the software I was using does that, and it says, "Congratulations, you should take the standard deduction." Well, you should have told me that an hour ago.
Yeah, but don't we get paid by the federal government for doing all those calculations and spending all that time? No, we don't. No, that's just time wasted that we can't be doing something else. So, yeah, April 15th is coming along. Well, listen, for businesses, now, this episode, I believe, is airing on March 15th, and the day before that is when the corporate income tax returns are due. Corporate tax returns are due March 15th, personal on April 15th, although I think this year it's April 17th. So, yep, a lot of fun stuff. Or just have April 15th, another nice spring day that you don't have to worry about. I take the nice
spring day.
Yeah, nice spring day.
All right, again, let's remind everybody of our email address, thefairtaxguys@gmail.com. Like us on Facebook as well. And as you mentioned, this episode should air on the 16th of March, which is just before this month's webinar. If you'd like to get involved, if there's no live face-to-face fair tax meetings in your area where you can learn more about the fair tax, you can go online and do it.
Yep. To sign up for the webinar, and please tell other people, if you have folks that are not familiar with the fair tax and maybe they don't do podcasts, well, maybe they'd prefer to listen to a 1-hour webinar and get a basic introduction to the fair tax and then handle a special topic and so forth. So, yes, it will be the 22nd, the fourth Thursday of the month, and you have to sign up in advance by going to fairtax.org/webinar, fairtax.org/webinar. Sign up there. It sends you an email. You click the link just before 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and you'll be in. I want to do quickly, Daniel Dyer's the guy that gave us the either or, with the fair tax. He sent us an email about 2 years ago. Thanks, Daniel. This was a great idea, and we are pleased to use it.
And your webinars are interactive. If you've got a question, you can ask it.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks. That's a good point. It is interactive, and you can type in questions, and we'll do our best to answer all the questions. Yes, indeed.
All right. Well, you're going to have fun doing that this next time.
Well, I'd like to think so, yeah. I am going to enjoy it. I just got to learn how to use the software.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up this edition of Fair Tax Power Radio. Again, thank you so much for listening. Tell your family and friends about it. And again, I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Molero.
We are the Fair Tax Guys, reminding you that the fair tax is America's big solution, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
Fair tax is coming.